So let's continue that reading of a book surrounded by it is beware the fury, of a patient man, beware indeed. Do you recognize this old, like a saying, the person who, like a coin, it probably had a green in mind, and you may never have seen, a green lose his temper. It may very well be that your good friend, the friendly and gentle pal you never had a serious argument with, hasn't ever shown a shred of a bad temper. Does that mean that this kind of person who can get angry? Not at all. It just means they kind of suppressing. It just means that instead of turning his temper outwards, it's oriented in another direction, inwards. So yeah, it's like a public face, Just because you see that someone acting politely doesn't mean that he's gonna be like that in any circumstances. And I would liken a green's like a temperament to a 50-gallon beer barrel. Can you imagine how many shot glasses it would take to fill it? We could feel even more before we even start covering the bottom of it. Many greens, function like that. They receive and accept without objecting, and this is very much connected to this kind of desire to avoid conflict, but also to their inability to say no. They simply agree because it's easier that way. So I thought actually it's opposite, that they actually can explode after being a chill, but it seems like they just don't like to say no. And does this mean, for example, that Greens don't have their own opinions? Not at all. They have just as many opinions about things as anyone else. They just don't talk about their opinions, and this is often the problem, because they feel the barrel week in and week out. A green, for example, accepts one perceived injustice after the other. Note that I said perceived. It may take several years before the barrel is full. Now take this barrel, lift it up and pour the contents out over your desk. And what, for example, happens? Everything will be washed away. The water in the barrel will not only wash away everything on your desk away, and even the desk itself, and you along with it, will go out with the flow too. And there is no stopping it. You said that I didn't finish the project on time. Really, last week you said that I didn't do it well enough. Now let me tell you this. A year ago you promised me a new office, and it still hasn't materialized. And when I was hired here back in 1997, you said the same thing, and now let me tell you. So in other words, they got a good memory, especially I guess they remembering important and bad things. But you gotta remember, green personality in general, they got this kind of conservative personality. They don't like changes. kind of low energy, like conformist, you can say. And everything has to come out. Just make sure that you're not the spark that sets it all off. The problem is large scale. Greens don't release any anger or frustration, but control their emotions so as not to create trouble or stand out. So in other words, they suppressing, they keeping that like a real emotion in order to be, in order to avoid conflict. But they feel and experience just as much as everyone else does. They just lack the natural tools to release everything. But we can help by becoming facilitators. We can ask questions, invite them in, and look for signals. Look at their body language to see if there is a sign of disapproval. Create a healthy environment around a green so that he becomes comfortable enough to say what he thinks, so that he doesn't have to continually compromise his position. So in other words, they kind of lacking. It's hard for the green to be direct, rather than, for example, in comparison with the red personality, which, because red personality, they way more strict, they more direct, maybe even rude. But green personality all the time like compromise, and I guess even kind of lose their own interest just in order to look cool, normal. Otherwise, he will turn and all his frustration inwards, and we know what this kind of stress can do to a person. I have my own like a private theory, which like I certainly cannot prove scientifically, but I suspect that this may be like the main, reason why like Greens suffer burnout. They carry anxiety, anguish, and even anger for so long that it eventually makes them ill. It's a noticeable problem that should be taken seriously. So they kind of lacking coping mechanism, I guess. Like, in other words, they lacking this kind of emotional intelligence, like the way how to release their emotions. And like, for example, some people like, not necessarily they say this shit like directly what they don't like, but they can say it like, in a nice, polite way. But Greens, they're ready to say yes, but for the manipulator, I guess it's like a perfect victim. Complaint a day. During an extremely stressful period in my earlier career in the banking sector, I once heard a comment about a blue. All of us, and blue, let me remind you, blue personality, it is a type of personality which kind of like a, you can say kind of like a cold-blooded, just like nothing personal, just business, low energy in terms of emotions, like a logic-based behavior rather than emotional-based behavior. And all of us were working every day and night, and many of us were showing the stress. Frustration was like, hanging in the air. Our credit controller was, in the middle of like the whole thing. Nothing got to her. She never even acted as stressed. Her face was absolutely indecipherable. In other words, hard to get what the fuck is going on, I guess. And her gestures were as limited and moderate as always. So, in comparison with the greens, I guess we can tell that if greens like we can say that they kind of both in terms of emotional control. Greens lack emotional control, but blues, they not necessarily how can I say, emotionally maybe intelligent, but they intelligent in a way in terms of control. In other words, they have ability to hide, to not show, while green personality they, for them, like even though like they say for example yes, and but if you like observe their body language, you can find out that they actually no. Okay, let's go back to the text. While the rest of us like ate our lunch on the go, she took her full 16 minutes and ate in a peace and quiet. It was like as if nothing could disturb her peace. Then, like one of my like a yellow red colleague said, she's not normal. She doesn't have any feelings in her body. Like kind of like you definitely know these kind of people, like a robots, you know. Back then it sounded logical to me, but when you think about it, it cannot be true. Blues simply have less need to communicate than greens. So in other words, greens kind of more social, and blues vice versa. So they, simply don't do it. Some things turn inwards even for blues. Those who are quick thinkers may wonder if blues run the risk of burnout just as much as green do. Not at all. They have a system to keep stress under control. So, in other words, blues got coping mechanism in order to, even though they do not showing emotions, like suppressing emotions, they, I guess, finding a way to release it in another way. So maybe they fucking punching some boxing bag, but after that they looking chill, emotionally maybe like a robot, because previously they released, and that's the way how they, I guess, dealing with their emotions. Metaphorically speaking, blues have, as a big beer barrel as greens have, but there is one crucial difference. At the bottom of the barrel, there is a handy little tap. This tap gives the blue a valve to release part of the contents of the barrel. He can regulate the pressure whenever he wishes to. In other words, they really blues got they decide how to behave, not just words but in terms of a body language, to not show, for example, if they under the stress, maybe they look cool, but it doesn't mean that they don't have this feeling, but they got ability to control their body language. Moreover, the tap leaks, and it's not tight enough to create a perfect seal, and small drops drip most of the time. Blues dissatisfaction comes out in the form of tiny grumblings. For example, here's the quote: "Just look, someone has misplaced, then pen again, typical. Now I will have to finish this of myself as usual. I get the most boring task. There is no structure here, typical. And so he goes on, like his like a pinpricks affect those around him. But what they hear all the time is just like muttering trumpet. The embers don't fan into fire. We interpret it as a perpetual whining, but the disconnect is real. And because blue isn't sufficiently active to instigate something, he will argue about things rather than doing something about them. It's all based on complaints that others should see what he sees, that he doesn't have, any authority to act, or that he's simply in a bad mood. But for him, this is a great way of keeping the pressure under control, so the barrel will never need to be emptied out over somebody's desk, and those serious catastrophes avoided. Interesting. So they, based on authors' point of view, blues like to complain. The way to manage his nagging is to ask counter questions, ask for concrete examples, ask for suggestions for improvement, because I guess it's more like not like emotional complaints, but more like, because blue personality got like analytical thinking, they wondering why other people also don't see things what he sees. So author suggesting ask for suggestions for improvement. It may in fact be the case that, for example, the blue has solved the problem that is plaguing him, but that he needs a straight question in order for him to step forward and suggest a solution. What can you do about the fact that people don't get pissed off in the same way? With this a simple observation in mind, you can quickly form an idea of what type of person you're dealing with. Pay attention to how he reacts under stress and pressure. But at the same time, remember that no system is perfect. These are only indications, and they apply only to individual colors. Besides, as I wrote previously, a different situation can give rise to completely different forms of conduct. Generally speaking, the more important a particular thing is for a certain person, the stronger his reaction will be. Which is, makes sense. In other words, even if blue, I guess, if you see that there's a one topic and blue got lacking this kind of active body language, but if you switch to another topic and you see that his eyes or her eyes light up, body language more active, you can see it doesn't matter what he or she says, but the body language, for people in general, they can control their words, but no matter what type of a color you have, metaphorically speaking, you can't all the time control your body language. That's why, that's kind of like a hints give you like a real answer about his thinking. See for yourself. If someone insults your neighbor, you might think it was unfair, but you don't make a big scene out of it. However, if someone were to insult your husband or wife, you would be absolutely furious. That's just one example. There are many levels and like degrees of difference to reflect on. Yeah, it's like, again, any human got their own vulnerabilities, and again, the body language perfectly shows what exactly like a topic is your vulnerability. Alright, 17th chapter, I guess. Stress factors and energy thieves. What is stress? Anger is like one thing, like stress is another. Sometimes one is like a consequence of the other, but not always. Some people become angry because of stress, others become stressed because of anger. And that's a good point. Some people become angry because of stress, others become stressed because of anger. And when we speak about stress, or we often mean the feeling of having too much to do and too little time to do it. And there is like not enough time to do everything at work, and then on top of that factor, like in the time needed to go to the gym, meet like with friends, spend time with family, do various kind of like recreational activities, or and maybe sleep. However, yeah, it's like depends on the context. It could be different like reasons of like any kind of stress. Makes sense. However, the stress that makes us truly suffer is often due to things apart, like from a lack of time. And if you feel pressure and have like high expectations about like what you will do and how you're meant to be, you can become stressed even if you are not really pressed for time. Pressure, demands, and expectation creates stress and can make you feel self-critical and powerless. You may find it difficult to sleep or may feel physical pain in your body. Simply put, the feeling of stress arises when we experience greater demands and expectations that we can cope with. Different people react differently to stress with a surprise, which is a no-brainer. Seriously though, all of us react differently to stress. Different people can experience the same event in different ways, and a person can experience similar events differently at different times. The things you have been through in the past and how you're feeling right now all have an effect on how you act and react. In other words, your experience, your feeling, all that kind of shit, at the deep subconscious level, impacting to our decision making anyway, and maybe we even don't realize it. If you're well rested and feeling fine, you could experience a tough week at work as an invigorating challenge despite your heavy workload. But if you're tired and feeling down on yourself, you may experience the same week as something horrible and demoralizing. How does your color affect your stress? That's the good point. Good question. Like author pointing out, it says nothing about your stress threshold. That is how much stress you can bear, but it can say something about what stresses you. That's the good point. Because you can think like whatever color personality you're testing, that like this whatever stress situation, like you got a test on it, and let's say he or she passing this test, but that's not the point, because he got actual vulnerability in another area. And while we're thinking, oh my god, he or she like very resilient, but actually his vulnerability in different place. That's a very good point. So let me read that point again. But it can say something about what stresses you and how you will react to stress. In other words, it's not about the person's limits to the stress, but what exactly is stressing. Alright. Previously, I mentioned the concept of driving forces. Whatever forces motivate me to get up out of bed every morning, dash to work, and go to the extra mile. This book doesn't deal with like this dimension. But it's easy to see that we become stressed when we feel that we are spending too much time on the wrong things. Which is again like the same shit with social media, where people like are scrolling bunch of bullshit, non-useful, stupid shit, and of course you will feel like overwhelmed, exhausted, because you like imagine your brain like a stomach, and I hope you don't eating like any fucking stupid random shit. And I guess like metaphorically speaking, it's like the same way we get approach our brain in terms of so-called food, aka content. We gotta consume smartly, like otherwise it's gonna be like a fast food. You're eating a lot of shit, but you don't have energy. Well said. I gotta be philosopher. Fuck yeah. Okay. So let's go back to the text. This book doesn't deal with this. Okay. Let me read that paragraph again. Let me remind you, it was about that personality. Each personality. So in other words, we gotta think not about person's limits to the stress, but what exactly is stressing him or her. Previously, I mentioned the concept of driving forces, and whatever forces motivate me to, get out of bed every morning, dash to work, and go the extra mile. This book does not deal with this dimension, but it's easy to see what we become stressed when we feel that we're spending too much time on the wrong things. Okay. Once you understood what the most important stress factors in your life are, you will be better equipped to avoid them when possible. In other words, observe what exact shit triggering some sort of like anxiety in you, and I guess you gotta start to work on that. If you manager responsible for a number of people and you know their behavior profiles, you can avoid the worst pitfalls. A great deal of like stress can be avoided if you know how, and you can retain the group's like productivity, but the rest of the chapter is written with an element of irony, and I urge you to read it in that way. Okay, let's go. Stress factors for rats. Yeah, that's interesting. And let me remind you, red personality is kind of like a boss personality who say things directly, don't give a fuck about your emotions. Yeah. It's like I guess this quote fits perfectly for the red type of personality. It's gonna be like there's the two things to do this thing, like my way or in the wrong way. Okay, let's go back to the text. If you would like to stress out a rat, you can try one of the following to lower his self-confidence. So we gotta, which makes sense, because red, I guess they driven by ego, like they like to act confidently, and that's why we hitting to that like a vulnerability to that target. Take every form of authority away, because reds don't like to give up control, and the stress factor for the red, where you definitely can see their reaction when you want to take away their control. Not being involved in a decision making is really difficult for Reds. He always believed that he has better ideas, so he also believes that he should be like one in charge of a project. Achieve no results whatsoever if we're not making immediate headway. Then all our work has been wasted, and such an insight can trigger severe a stress reaction in the red, and those around him should be on their guard. He will look for scapegoats. Okay, I guess for today it's kind of okay. We discussed about green, blue, what kind of things triggering each personality and in general. So see you next time.